I am a recovering high achiever, and I'm also trying to unlearn those high achieving tendencies that have carried me through most of my life. Even as a kid, I loved school. I loved learning. I remember going on the desktop with Windows Vista to make PowerPoint presentations about random topics. I also used Microsoft Paint to make designs about things that I was learning at school. I vividly remember hanging around the teachers, especially at recess, instead of kids my own age. And when we had student interns in our classroom, I loved asking them questions about university, about careers, about their lives, and wanting to know who they are. In high school, I was involved with so many things: extracurricular activities, societies, clubs, organizing fundraisers. And then in university, I worked at one time. I had 3 part-time jobs, so I always had different jobs on the go. I studied abroad, I was a peer tutor, and I was applying for every single scholarship that I could find. At that time also, I had in mind to go to law school, so I wrote the law school admission test and I applied. I was accepted to Canada's top law schools with big scholarships. I later decided that law school was not for me, and I went a different path. When I look back now at that entire period, especially of education, I think, wow, did I have a chance to breathe? Did I pause? Did I enjoy that moment? Or was I just on this constant hamster wheel of producing and putting out projects and producing output? People ask me, so what's next? A PhD, right? You're obviously going to do a PhD. Your grades are good. You have a good portfolio. You obviously write strong applications. Get a PhD, get that credential, and go change the field or contribute to the field. And that is something that I have thought about for a while. I have become very self aware why this path is not right for me at this time, if at all. I don't know the future, but I know for the foreseeable future, it's not something that I want to participate in. And I'm not saying that PhDs are bad or people who do PhDs are making a mistake, not at all. It's more, I have the clarity on what makes sense for me, and especially the reasons why I am not going to pursue a PhD, why I don't desire a PhD. The first one being, I have experienced institutional harm and injustice, and I won't share all the specifics around that. But what I will say is that in several situations when I questioned things like power and privilege and systems and processes, I was quickly put in my place. I was put back into a corner. And after moving through that and working on myself after those moments, I realized that the blindfolds that was on me, or that curtain that was in front of me, was lifted. And I did not see academia or education the way I previously did. I am no longer the same person that I was prior to those experiences. And I understand that politics are everywhere, people politics, dynamics, interpersonal things. I understand it's in every space, but I also remind myself that it is okay that I don't want to be in those spaces where I have been previously victimized and harmed. I also know that not every department, not every professor, institution, etc., not all of those things are going to be harmful. However, at the same time, it's not really a risk that I want to take or a space where I can feel like myself fully, or at least as close to myself as I want to be. As I have moved on from more formal education and started taking courses in coaching and somatic practices, I feel like I have a better understanding of how my brain works and how I process information and the styles and formats of learning that are the best for me, even though I did well in traditional academic settings with the classroom, with the teacher, where there's lots of memory and testing. I I guess I don't really feel compatible with that anymore. In academia, especially, there seems to be, at least how I perceive it, a very rigid way of writing and reading and arguing and providing evidence that, while I think is valid, I also, in this point in life, I want to learn for the sake of learning. I want to read for the love of reading, write for the love of writing, speak for the love of speaking because I want to, not because I have to, or because there's pressure on me to perform and produce results. And there are less taxing ways to get to those moments and that joy. And that doesn't necessarily have to involve a PhD. And I highly respect people who have a PhD. I know it's a really tough journey and a tough credential. And it's not something that fits with my personality and my values at the moment. As part of academia, especially in the Canadian context, things are often done with a very Eurocentric lens. And I remember professors even telling me that certain sources were not deemed credible because of who wrote them and the institutions that these authors and researchers were a part of. And that made me question whose idea is it, what is legitimate or not, who controls what is professional, what is unprofessional, what is valid research, what is invalid research. Even papers themselves are often written in a very exclusionary way. It's hard to dissect what is going on. Even to get access to the majority of papers is really challenging. I know that is changing and there is progress being made to ensure that more articles and publications are open access. But I find even if you can get your hands on a paper, to read and understand it is just not accessible. And I'm not sure if I want to be a part of a space that continues to uphold things like ableism, of capitalism, and of course, those things are everywhere. However, I also feel like in academia, it's like those things are amplified. Thankfully, many creators and professors and researchers now are speaking up and speaking out about these inequalities, and things are slowly changing. And also, I can recognize I don't want to fight that battle. I don't want to join that battle right now, if ever. I don't want to overextend myself. And if I want to contribute or change or challenge these systems, there are other ways to do it. And those things and those methods can overlap and coexist together. I don't want to be fighting the good fight. I have fought so much in the past and I'm tired. Something else that has troubled me with academia, especially, is the extractivism. Often, researchers are going into communities and spaces and asking participants, especially in the social sciences and social science research, asking participants to talk about their experiences, um, difficulties, and using that data for their own research. And I understand that maybe the intention is not to harm those participants or those groups, but I question what good are they receiving in return? How are they actually being helped? How are their lives being made easier? The participants will go to a focus group or an interview and answer the questions or participate in whatever the researcher is asking of them. And then the researcher goes off, and nothing really changes in the participants' lives or in those communities. They're just left hanging, often even more harmed because they had to share again about difficulties for maybe the eighth time, and yet nothing changes. I know not every professor, every academic, every project, every initiative is like this, but I think the way my brain is and my body is, it's hard for me to act in a space or participate in a space or in a role that doesn't align with my core values, which is why research to me is a very, I guess, tender or delicate subject, because I'm not sure how much good comes of it. And I'm not discrediting people who are researchers. What I'm, I guess, internally struggling with is there is so much research and data out there. There are so many policy recommendations out there, but what is actually changing? What is being helped? Who is being helped? Because the people that I talk to, the people in my circles, the people that I know, life is getting harder, and the research is being done, but I'm wondering where in this funnel does it go? What happens after the data is collected? Because it seems like there is a disconnect between research and reality and what is happening on the ground in the communities. Academia, at least how I perceive it and what my experience has been for the most part, is that academia upholds capitalism, hegemony, ableism, patriarchy, and it's almost like it is 10x or 100x in those spaces, because even to get in to that space, you have to have certain privileges and access. It's hard for me to want that as a part of my future, because I'm someone who is quite realistic, who is quite pragmatic, and although I have done and dived a bit into theory in the past, I don't think it really sits well with me, and that's okay. While I know that no space or area or job or role is going to be free of these systems, I feel like pursuing a PhD would really intensify these feelings for me. I have talked to women, particularly who are currently doing their PhDs, have done them, or who have dropped out. And the advice that I have received and applied to myself has been really informative. I've heard their stories, I've heard their highlights, I've heard their experiences, and the conclusion really is that a PhD is not for me. I'm content right now, and I'm at peace with that decision. I'm trying to undo years of hyper productivity, of pushing results. A PhD might create more pressure and push me towards the thing that I'm trying to stay away from. The way I think of it is like a tattoo. I personally don't want a tattoo, but if someone else wants one tattoo or 10 tattoos, that's great. And me not wanting a tattoo doesn't take away from them wanting tattoos, and vice versa. It doesn't mean that I'm against tattoos. I just know that I don't want one. I know my academic profile, my professional profile, my work experience. I know my grades. I've researched paths regarding PhDs and doctoral studies. I don't feel like gambling my mental health. I don't feel like being stretched thin physically, emotionally, financially, Could that change in 5, 10 years? Who knows? Maybe one day I'm writing my PhD and watching this video and laughing how ridiculous I sound. However, for now, I'm at peace with the situation, and I know opportunities are going to come with a PhD or without one, because I guess I have faith somehow it works out. And most importantly, I want to actively work on those high achieving tendencies. So a PhD might keep pushing me towards being a high achiever or even overachiever. And I want to be content with who I am, where I am, and this moment, what I have so far.